Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is October 21st, and this is another of our SIG CLI bi-weekly meetings. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. I don't have any particular announcements for today, so we can right away jump over to the topics. I see Eddie is on the call. Eddie, want to talk about the first issue that we covered last week during the blocker bug scrub?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just getting caught up here. Deer in the headlight moment.
We can start with
Okay.
if you want to.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Cool. So this one came up in our bug scrub, and this has come up in a bunch of different places and ways, and we've closed issues as duplicates. The TLDR is XDGG is the kind of like the base Linux philosophy for config files. It's the idea that configs should go inside of like a .config folder in your home directory, as opposed to being scattered around and kind of just have a centralized place. Most operating systems have like a built-in to default to this if you just rely on like the XDGG environment variables. And so it's kind of been open for a while, and we've kind of put a hold on it. So I think Doug volunteered to take a stab at this. We'll probably need a KEP for this, based on it being a big change, and a bunch of tooling will need to be adopted at some point.
Yeah, I'm aware of it, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I was wondering if you can use like a backwards, like if user have the kubeconfig file there and don't have the .config kubectl there, so we still use that at least for 2-3 months or something like that after we change the default config value.
I assume we'd probably have to keep using .cube config until we cut a major version change, because that's a pretty breaking change. But I'd agree. I think we could default to that new XDGG stuff.
What I would suggest is probably following what we have with every single API that we're introducing. And that means introduce this as an optional feature that you can enable on demand. Let it sit for one release, gather some feedback, gather bugs, fix any bugs if there will be some. In the next release, we would switch the flip and make it opt out so that it will be the default, but those people that want to go back to the previous behavior would have it. And then in the third release, we would
Sure, sounds a good plan.
We would remove the option of going back to the cube to the old cube file. But for the backwards compatibility, we would keep reading the old location for longer than those 3 releases. It would not be possible to go back to the old one by default, but we would still read that one and eventually put a warning somewhere there.
I think we
I
probably
agree.
want
I just wanted. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
you can continue.
I was just going to say that, like, it's. I think it's possible that we would want to just support .kube/config forever, or like 3 years, or might as well be forever, because we're like the chances of breaking people are high, and the what's to be gained from not falling back on that is pretty low.
Yeah, I agree. I was just wondering if Match could write his idea in the issue, so
Sure,
I can follow from the issue.
Yeah, I'll write it down in that issue. That's basically what we are doing with every API, and I would treat our configuration as a sort of API. That's why I would go this route. This allows people interested in the new feature trying it out, eventually report the bugs, and yes, we need a cap, and the cap has to explicitly call out this approach. Even though we probably don't say that configuration is our API, but it's a pretty important thing for people, especially that we will be dividing the config. Currently, everything goes under home.cube. That includes both the config and the cache. With XDG directory specification, we would be splitting to cache landing in .cachecube and config landing in .config/cube. So it'll be a big breaking change, and we need to make sure that cap is there, and that we are very loud about doing that change. That includes sending announcements to SIG CLI and Kubernetes dev, probably a Kubernetes blog, and that's doable. And KEP is the starting point. So if you're Douglas open to working on it, I'm more than happy to welcome that kind of a change.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just picking up some issues that I see. They are while install mode, so just trying to move forward with those and also be familiar with the process, the code. So it'd be nice.
I was just going to amplify what Maciej said. We need to communicate with the rest of the community, and that might include showing up at the Kubernetes next community meeting. And as Maciej said, we need to get this out so that nobody's surprised by this. And actually, it might even be worthwhile to not do anything, but just submit, ask for feedback for a little bit before we actually start working on this, just to make sure that we know that people are going to be on board.
So we can definitely put a cap together already, and then we can send out the infos out. The cap won't be approved until the next release cycle starts, and that will be probably the beginning of the next year. We can handle the reviews, we can handle all the preliminary work and the announcements, and when the gates open for 121, we will be able to, by that time, we will gather the feedback, and then we will be able to focus on the implementation, because the formal part will be done by then. There's another issue that I linked to this one also. There was an ask for multiple configs available within the Kube home directory. I purposefully put it together with the other one, because since we will be touching on the configuration area, can you, Doug, also see maybe the XDG specs also touches on the topic of having multiple configs? So we could have a clear answer along the line of, yes, we are going to set to respect it, or nope, that's not going to happen at all. That, can you also include that one? Oh, I'll write it down in the other issue, and we can pick up the cap discussion from there.
Yeah, +1 to that. Doug, if you want any pairing or help with any of the cap or the bureaucracy stuff, feel free to tag me in. I've been wanting to dig into that a little bit more.
Oh, great. Thank you. I will take a look today probably, and I will ping you later then. Thank you.
Cool. The other thing I want to bring up, this is something that's been in the back of my mind for a bit, is I don't think the kubeconfig file schema has any concept of configurations that are user configurable at the kubeconfig level, to avoid having to pass flags or something all the time. Kind of, like saying defaults that users can configure on their end. I wonder if this ties to that. And the reason I'm thinking that is because if people are going to want to opt into this feature, it would be good to be able to toss that into your kubeconfig to not have to pass the flag every time and remember any of that logic. I know that's a much bigger topic than this one.
Since we will be exploring the overall idea of touching configuration, it is definitely reasonable to include the topic. We would not break the old the old way, but the new configuration. It could easily be even a separate config file for the defaults. Definitely something that would be worthy of exploring in the CAP. Can you, Eddie, write your thoughts into the issue so that it doesn't disappear?
Yeah, I'll capture that.
Cool.
And one more thing to add on that too is one of the things I noticed about the config file that I think is an obstacle to multiple configs is that the config file essentially serves two purposes. One is to define the clusters and what you can select. And then it also has the concept of current context. So that's where it stores which one you have currently selected. So it seems like current context should belong maybe in that other config file that you just mentioned, Mache, because it's not really like if you think about like I want to have a bunch of different config files that define my clusters, but then which one of those is the one that controls which one you have currently selected. So anyway, I can write that a note on that in the issue as well, but I think that maybe it's a good time to address that potentially.
Just a quick point. We already have code which merges config files. That code already exists and is already part of how we parse config files now. Just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just wanted to throw out there that I'll bring this up to Justin Garrison, who demoed his thing last time, because I feel like this is right up Justin's alley in terms of what he was looking for. So I'll let him know about this one.
I was about to say the exact same thing. That it fits into what Justin was doing last time with regards to multiple configs. So yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Does anyone have any question, thoughts, suggestions with regards to this topic since we're exploring this area? Okay, I'm hearing none. Let's jump off to the next topic. Eddie, another of our blocker bug issues is the describe pattern matching.
So yes, okay. So I see Antoine just commented. Is Antoine on the call?
I haven't seen him.
Okay. The TLDR for this one is describe does pattern matching. So if you type kubectl describe secret default, and there's a secret name default token stuff, it will pattern match on the beginning of that search. This behavior is not replicated through anything else, including get and other features. And this kind of just, Zhao brought this up about just finding consistency. So I think we can make a decision if we want to implement this elsewhere, deprecate this behavior inside of describe. I didn't read what Antoine said, but he just commented.
Antoine said that he doesn't want to have that in Get, and I totally agree with him. So a quick question to everyone. Speak up if you knew that kubectl describe that's a prefix matching when you do kubectl describe secret default or whatever.
I assume the reason that this exists is because like our create secret command has the option to add a suffix with the hash of the secret name, or like customized as the same, so that the secret, like you do create secret and you specify, my secret, and then you describe on the secret you just created, and then it doesn't show up because you added a suffix. But meh,
I mean,
nitpicking.
Personally, I rarely invoke describe on a set of resources. My describe invocation is usually then after I do kubectl get whatever resource. Let's say I'm gonna do kubectl get secrets. I'm gonna see a list, and if I want to dive into one particular, I will do describe secret, and I'll get the name because I already did get beforehand. If I want to do describe, I can also go with describe secret, and I get all of them. But I rarely do that because that's pointless unless I know there's only one instance of a particular resource. So I would be inclined to deprecate that functionality and then just get rid of it eventually. Okay. I'm going to reply to Dad. Cool. Eddie, you want to go, since you're on the roll, you want to go next, especially that I have an upgrade for you with regards to Update Cobra?
Yeah, so this is a quick and easy one, hopefully. You can read through that PR if you're interested. I opened a PR to bump Cobra so we can get some new functionality that Brian and Knight need to work on completion, and because Brian is the Lord and Savior of completion. And there's a transitive he's shaking his head. There was a transitive dependency change for Cobra that depended on a newer version of GoYAML, and GoYAML new version broke or changed the default line wrapping behavior from being infinite line wrapping to 80 characters. And so this is obviously a breaking change. And so this broke a bunch of our tests and tools and conformance tests. So the TLDR solution is, I've been talking to Gustavo, who's the developer of GoYAML, and he's going to roll back that change for us and cut a new release. So we should be good there.
I've heard that the new release should be already available. I was talking with Matt Farina on Monday, and he mentioned that a new release was cut over the weekend. I haven't checked because I ran out of time, but that's what I've heard.
So that, what you're talking about is Cobra cut a new release to depend on an older version of GoYAML that didn't have that change in it.
Oh, this way. Okay.
Yes, which was a good stopgap for us, but Gustavo got back to me in email, and so he's just going to cut a new GoYAML release. So I'm kind of just going to hold on that until we see what's happening there.
Okay. Okay. So we have a backwards compatible solution for if we run out of time waiting for Gustavo, and if Gustavo cuts his new release, then we need to sync in Cobra and then get that into Cube.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll write it down afterwards.
I feel like this is a good case study of like open source dependencies, just like small changes breaking things in unknown places. So maybe this is a good talk one day. It'll be referenced in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Okay, I see Lee on the call. Lee, you want to
Hi,
talk
everyone.
about, yeah, kubectl debug? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going through the steps to get debug up to our graduation criteria from alpha to beta. One of the things that I added was completing a user survey to see if there's any big feedback, any major things that we want to change before leaving alpha. And so I was just wanted to ask around about the method of doing that. I don't see a lot of user surveys going around. So I was just planning on doing something like creating a Google form, sending it to the mailing list. But if anyone has any better ideas, I'm happy to do other things too.
I would definitely go with this approach, and send it over to KubeDev. That one has the broadest reach, and then eventually we can tweet about that, and some of us will retweet the topic, and that should eventually gather sufficient information that we might require for the graduation.
Okay, sounds good. I'll put something together then and send it for review.
Okay. Okay, that was fast. We're 25 past and we stormed through all the topics. Okay, so before we move on to the stand-ups, does anyone is new to the call? I'm just quickly looking through the list. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, so I'm Mike Camp. I work with, y'all might know Bailey Hayes at SAS. So, so I just added something to customize for an edit, the edit command to add and remove transformers. And like as a company, we've got a pretty complex deployment using customize and on top of Kubernetes of our software, of our SaaS software. So thank you, Jeff, for accepting that pull request and just kind of being a fly on the wall listening in.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, by the way.
A pleasure.
Okay. Okay, so do we have anyone else that is new to this call?
This is Mike here. I recently joined Google and helping out Sean, Jeff, and Morton with some of the customized stuff.
Cool, welcome. Okay, I think the rest of the names I am pretty familiar with. So I did identify new person. Okay, welcome both of you. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on our call. Does anyone have any topics that they want to walk through with the group? Okay, hearing none. In that case, we can move over to the stand-ups. Nick, I've noticed that you put together a couple updates about CLI. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, just super quick. We've actually had a couple of points of recent interest in using CUI for other client integrations. I mentioned one here. It seems to be the furthest along. But over the past couple of weeks, I think about 3 people have come in wanting to do their own integrations and roll out versions of CUI. So I decided to mention one. They actually release it. You go to the website and they actually, kind of interesting, they actually did this all pretty much on their own. They read our documentation and made something happen. So this ends up not being, I think they're more of a serverless kind of thing, but this is, I thought it was kind of interesting. Somebody was able to take our work and roll their own pretty much. And so they made a set of commands to pretty much be kind of like a postman as far as I can tell for. So I thought it was interesting. There's a couple others too that I haven't seen how they've got where they're going yet, but they've been doing stuff with CUI. So when they make progress, I'll let you guys know. The second thing is just we've been really continuing to refine the stuff we talked about last time. I was on the call, at least I missed last times, but just continued refinements to see how we can refine the this notebook, more notebook-like presentation, so we can have a terminal, but you can intersperse commentary essentially. And so we've done some continued refinements, and you can look at it yourself with the links. We're about to release that. With those changes, I think we're in pretty good shape. So maybe we can think about, how we can maybe have some meat points for some of the documentation work. We can talk about that maybe next time. But we've made pretty substantial progress on the design, so you guys can check it out offline. That's all I got.
Okay, that's good news. I'm glad to hear that. Does anyone else have any projects or stuff that they worked in the past couple of weeks, 2, 3, whatever, that you want to share with the group? Going once, going twice. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Mancha. Should we mention something about the KubeCon virtual coming up here in a couple weeks?
I did mention a KubeCon, and there's a link in the agenda from our last call from 2 weeks ago. I didn't want to repeat ourselves over and over again. But yes, KubeCon is happening somewhere mid-November. If you haven't heard about it, it's again virtual for obvious reasons. There's a link in the agenda in the previous one when we will be holding our SIG CLI session. I'll probably remind about the topic in 2 weeks, which will be shortly before the KubeCon itself. And I guess with that happy thought, we can close today's calls, and I'm going to give you all back 30 minutes of your precious time. Thank you very much. Stay safe and see you in 2 weeks. Bye, y'all.